Ukraine-Russia deal. Is it going against the grain? Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
When grain is the ingredient for resolving political disputes, and then grown in the ground by military boots, where Ukraine's soil develops Russian roots, it backfires when the whole crop shoots. Clergyman Pete,
Yes.
I ask you, listening to the news, it seems like the new Ukraine and Russian deal could be perhaps something that may not happen. As we've seen, the idea of a landmark deal, but the idea being is that grain can now be exported without the principle of any firing, seems to have perhaps gone awry. Now, of course, we need to know a little bit more detail here, but I will ask you, what do you think of the principle of having a grain deal where effectively we can start to find a route to peace?
Well, I think my view of this is if we don't get that grain out of Ukraine and across Europe, certainly, but I know it goes even further than that, we're going to see big social unrest. That's when you might see the big issues that we've been fearing and highlighting the possibility of here on Market Beat for some time, of social unrest across Europe, and especially looking at Germany at the moment, because they are having big issues with slightly ludicrous policies on fuel, which have left them in real difficulties. If
Heavily
they start
reliant on Russian gas.
Yes, if they also aren't getting enough to eat, that's when issues really start, and you start to get problems with social unrest. So I think we need it. It's the thing you've got to even make concessions to get. So yes, I do think it's a good idea. As I was saying, we were discussing this before we went on air. As I was saying, it's like when you ask directions to somewhere, and the person you're asking says, "Well, I wouldn't start from here," which is very unhelpful. So I'm going to be as unhelpful and say, "Well, we shouldn't be in this position of having to make this sort of deal, because the leaders of the countries involved in supporting Ukraine and tempting Russia, almost pushing them into a bigger incursion than they seem to have planned. At least that seems to be what's happened. They knew that this was an issue before they did that. Of course, they knew the situation and how the deliveries of grain were organised. They should never have got into this position. But I mean, we're here now, so that's perhaps not that helpful. So yeah, I do think some sort of agreement needs to be reached, or the whole of the Western world is in trouble.
Well, it is. But the whole point of this deal was the following. Essentially, the idea being is that grain could be released from Ukraine's ports, essentially to issue it around the world. I believe that Ukraine offers around at least a fifth of the world's grain exports. Significant. And as Clergyman Pete has highlighted, this is now beginning to impact food supplies. Now, the thing here is that the deal was to effectively stop war, stop any kind of attacks on ports. And then the idea is that the grains could be exported to various countries, including Russia, ironically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But what happened is that very recently missiles hit the port of Odessa. Was this a mistake? Yeah. Was this a tactic? Who knows? But what is interesting is that President Zelensky said that the attack proved Russia would find ways to not implement the deal. Now, maybe this is just a one-off incident, and we're actually sort of seeing that some of the conflicts just have come to an end, and really the timing is poor in the correlation of actually putting a fixed deal in place. But here's the other thing. What we've seen is many farmers in Ukraine have been severely affected by this, and in interesting ways as well, which needs to be highlighted. So what has happened is that many Ukraine farmers have found that actually thousands of their hectares have actually been affected by the conflict. They've been scarred by not only military weapons and bombs landing on them, but the the scorn on the corn through fire has essentially made a lot of their land almost unusable. So lots of crops have been lost already. So whilst, again, I think that there's a principle of a deal there, can actually Ukraine continue to supply in the same way? Well, I think that there may be some issues there on supply, but I do think the principle of finding ways to at least get something in to stop the conflict is a good one. So we all know that the grain is important. It's important to all parties, Russia, Ukraine, and other parts of the world. My question would be is what else could be put in place? Is there other ways in which we could start to open up the ports to other things? But it doesn't take away this problem that that we still have on the table, which is Russia seems fairly set on actually still encroaching on Ukraine. The Donbass region still is under attack.
Mhm.
So is it just really a red herring, all of this deal? So I just want to sort of get a sense of what is this ultimately leading to? Can it lead to peace, or is it just another tactic?
Well, I don't see it necessarily. This is just my reading of it. I can't show see what's in the minds of the various participants, but it seems to me it's not a road to peace. It's a pragmatic solution to a problem, in that if Russia doesn't do this, doesn't allow the grain to leave, there'll be such huge social unrest. You're talking the sort of social unrest which like civil war level. That's what we're talking about. Because if there's no food, that's when suddenly civilization drops. Being civilized rather drops, and the veil is lifted, and people's animal instincts come together. I just don't think that then the Western governments can allow that. So there could then be a big war with Russia to take over. And Russia does not want that. They don't want the big war with the West. That would ruin everything. They just want to take the regions of Ukraine that they were trying to surround, and they still seem to be aiming to do that. Take the major cities that are near there, so they need to take Kiev as well, but not the whole of it, not the area that Poland are interested in. So Poland might get their bit, who knows? But so that's my reading of it. So with that being the case, this is simply a way of Russia stopping it from escalating too far, getting completely out of control. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be a way to peace before they've achieved their military aims. I don't see it at all.
Exactly. Well, interestingly, millions of tons of grain were actually sort of stockpiled or trapped in many ways in Ukraine because it simply couldn't be exported.
Yeah.
And it's actually taken several months to actually get to the deal, the principle of a deal. Now, the agreement has been hailed as a beacon of hope by the UN, which is a good thing, and is actually comprised of a number of key representatives. The UN, Turkey, Russia, and Ukraine officials have all been involved. Now, I wonder in the negotiation of this is that to what extent will this ceasefire, shall we say, can happen? Because obviously shipping out millions of tons of grain isn't going to literally happen overnight. It's going to take time to disperse. And of course, the other thing is that what we want it to be sustainable. So whatever is in the ports at the moment is one thing, but what comes from the farms and the crops, and we're coming up to we are already in basically a crop season. People are yielding their crops, getting them to the food suppliers and the stocks going through. So we want to get back to, dare I say, a normal situation where people can go back and actually start to trade with this grain. And other things as well. I mean, we talk about grain, but there are lots of other things from fishing and many other things that need to happen. I still think that it comes back to what we said on previous shows. Something has to happen at the negotiation table beyond this tactic of the deal of the grain. I think that there's got to be some concession on the Donbass regions, because otherwise I don't see that Russia will stop. I can see that they might stop temporarily, but so the real heart of this problem isn't just about the grain. It's like dare I say, the symptom, not the cause. And so I think it has to come back to the ownership of borders, and I don't see any other way out.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think this deal can only be a sort of stopgap. I suppose that's what
it is. Yeah.
Yes, it's not a stepping stone on the way. It's a stopgap. There's still all the work to do on negotiating for the real peace. Well, there we are. That's our analysis of that situation with the attack on Odessa by Russia being a sort of step back, meaning that the deal may not in fact go ahead. But if it does go ahead, we're going to see some easing of food shortages. And if that does happen, then we still have, though, all the work to do to negotiate a peace with Russia. Let us know what you think about the situation. Are you already finding food shortages in your area, wherever you are in the world? Well, that's it from Mark and Pete for this week. Remember to like and comment and leave us a review. It really does help. Catch you next time.